and I do lead a team of 20-some virtual consultants who do career assessments around the U.S. and even a person in Africa. So that's just a little bit about me. Melanie, you'll do yourself justice.
No.
I just know enough of you to give you my first choice to get here today.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm like so honored, to be honest with you, just that you would ask me to be a part of this. And thank you, Karen, for letting me join. But yeah, I was a recruiter myself for 20 years. I pivoted into career coaching when I was kind of trying to figure out what was going to be next. And my very last position was in corporate recruiting. I'm right outside of DC. And so I officially transitioned full-time to coaching in 2018. And since then, I've worked with individuals. I too work with a variety of individuals, from college graduates to C-level executives. And right now I have a lot of mid-career professionals. That's kind of a little bit of a mix of what I've got right now going on. But I work with individuals across the United States in all different industries, and they come from all different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds. And I help them with everything from their resumes to their LinkedIn profiles to their networking, job search strategies, and really being able to give them some career guidance. But my goal is also to be able to open up a door and show them what happens, give them some understanding of what happens behind the scenes, so that they can better navigate this job market.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing how your information gets received on the other end, and even just the diversity of how that can happen. Like, there's no one way you get evaluated for an opportunity. Many companies do it in many different ways. Ed, when it comes to career optimization, really, how would you define like the overall paradigm that people can look through as a lens to optimizing their career at this moment in time?
Well, put some thought into this. There's different stages that we go through, and I talked to at least 13 sometimes in a person's career where you could stop and they have to kind of relook at reassessing and optimizing. And it all begins when you're in high school and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and that's the launching pad. And if you can really hit it incredibly right out of the gate, you could be in this amazing career right out of the gate. But life has these twists and turns continuously, and then what ends up happening is that you start to figure out who you are, what you like, what you don't like, and then at some point you're going to get to a point where you have to ask yourself, well, what's your purpose? Because to optimize your career, it's really neat to know if you know what your purpose is. And everybody has it, and that's a really tough question. I didn't find my purpose. I don't think I could answer that question until I was in my mid-40s, believe it or not. And then that kind of then launched me to reassess where I was at to launch a career practice, right? But the other piece of this that I'll add is that, everybody's made up differently. And one of the ways, I love to see people optimize their career is to figure out who they are, the DNA. Everybody has a certain thing about them that makes them you. And then if you can match that you to something that you really love and enjoy to do, to the skills that you have, to the values that you have, if you can kind of bring those four things together and then set a course to say, okay, here's what my career is going. That's kind of the first beginning stages, Karen, that I've found that help people optimize, no matter how many years of experience they have, what stage. And that happens at 60, 65, 45, 30, 22. So that's kind of how that's kind of a framework that I tend to use.
What does that process look like?
Well, in my particular case, I'm a big fan of sitting down and doing an assessment for people. And it's
like a personality or strength assessment. Is there something you favor?
Yeah, it's a career assessment. We the team that I lead, we use a tool called Career Direct, and without a doubt, Career Direct is the number one tool in the world to assess careers. Not necessarily in the U.S., but in the world.
Hmm.
550 questions. It's intense. It's not free. Free has its own cost, by the way, when it comes to your career.
Good point.
And what you'll do is people will sit down and go through that, and you'll get a 24, 38 page report, and then the consultant will actually go through and translate what all that data means to someone to give them some much clearer choices to make. And I always say at the end of all our consultations, and I teach my team to do this, that in the end, it's not about what does Ed think you should do. It's about everything that I see here says, if you went this direction, be careful. If you go this direction, it might be really good. But eyes wide open now in terms of what your choices are going to be to optimize your career moving forward. So that's a big part of it.
Melanie, you're shaking your head. Yes. Do you also use the career direct assessment? Does your process look similar?
I don't use the career direct assessment, but I do, for select clients that, depending on where they're at, do use a variety of different assessments that, can everything from analyzing their strengths to also figuring out, okay, where have you been? What is it you don't like? And also asking people, asking individuals what outside of the, not just themselves, but going out and asking friends, coworkers that they can trust, family, what are, how do you see me? What are my strengths? And I think it's important for people to have that feedback and understand how others perceive them and what they see as their strengths. Because I find a lot of people have so much trouble seeing that within themselves that because they most likely haven't been wherever they're at, that hasn't been built up within them, within that current organization or throughout their career.
You said you also work with college students, and Ed mentioned high school students. So if you can figure that out early on, right, you have your head start. Many don't have that head start. And, having taught college students myself, they had, at that point, I'd seen them, they're at year 4, right? Or 5 at Drexel. They went through, they already picked their major, they're committed to it. It comes kind of like, I'm at the end here. If I see a mismatch, I'm just going to move forward anyway. And, that gives them some experience. And as to your point, helps them figure out what they don't want sometimes. But how is the process any different when you're starting from that point? Is there any benefit to having those years of experience behind you?
Well, I definitely think years of experience help because it starts to narrow down what you don't want as opposed to everything. I was the college kid that did not know what she wanted. I would love to take any classes under the sun, and I changed my major a couple of times. Luckily, my kids have been they've been more direct in their path, and so I have one that's been out of college for 3 years, and I have one that's a freshman just getting ready for finals next week. So they're very direct and they have a very clear direction. So it depends on where you kind of land, but really finding out where do you get joy from? Like what really makes you happy? Because I think, we're often told like, oh, you got to go to work and you got to earn money. And of course you do have to do that and you have to pay your bills, and maybe jobs aren't going to be fun 24/7. But why not start early with some of your passions and really build them up? So it's not something that you suppress and then later on in life regret not having it. So I really think early on in your career, if there's something that you really want to do and pursue, why not go and do that? I think we're just a very different stage than, graduate, go into the workforce, and then you end up in a job that maybe isn't truly suited for you. And sometimes it takes a couple of times to really figure out what's going to be the right environment for you. But you already know some of that when you're, as you get into, my daughter, for example, learned through the pandemic that, she's gotten better with it, but she really doesn't like online learning. For her, she needed to be in front of a teacher and interacting with that teacher and having that. And some of that had to do with her classes and also the profession she wants to pursue one day. But but that was something she learned very early on, is that she did not, that was not the right environment for her.
Sounds like knowledge of yourself is really the starting point, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's cool that there are a lot of great tools out there now for that. I myself use kind of a proprietary process that's draws from a lot of those assessments. And it's very organic and intuitive, and it also, we should look at the other end, right? What's going on in the job market, the future of work, what direction are we going in? How do we connect the dots between what a person's passions are, what their aspirations are, what brings them joy, what helps them fulfill a mission they feel like they might be here to, and what's available in the job market. So from both of your perspectives, how do you put all the pieces together for your clients?
Wow. It goes back to once you figure out the direction you want to head. Some people are already in that direction. Other people, they have to make a course direction, and for other people, they have to make a pivot to get to that better place. And remember, pivots are where people have been in something for 10 years, 7 years, and you know what? This ain't for me. And I don't care if I have a college degree in it or not. I'm not happy. And those are harder career changes to make. But let's say it's not even a hard career change. No pivots are involved, but someone's just at a point in their career where you're at a very small company. And this happens a lot, 10-person company. And it's them and the boss, and the boss is like a couple of years older than them. They're not going anywhere, but they know they can grow their career. Then they come and they say, hey, Ed, how can I optimize my career? Well, chances of optimizing your career staying there, sometimes it happens, but most of the times it means you got to go make a change. And then the next thing is like, well, Ed, how do I do that? Right?
Yeah.
I've never really had to update my resume because my dad knew this person. That's how I got my job out of college. Now, so 10 years in, no. And then so, well, do you have a resume? No. How do you build a resume? Then do you have a LinkedIn profile? What's LinkedIn? Oh, no. Then you have to help them build a LinkedIn. Do you have a network? What's a network? Well, let's build a formal network. Or if they do have a LinkedIn, they have, 5 connections, and they're all family members. Yeah. So that's the starting point. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, once you get to that point, well, have you ever interviewed? No. Okay, well, you have to get them ready for interviewing, right? And then it's kind of like, well, how do you want to go do a job search? And there's multiple ways to do a job search. And the worst way possible is just go to the internet and start applying for jobs. Hands down. Melanie, would you agree?
I agree, absolutely. And I do something called a career vision action plan. And it's really about kind of meeting the person where they're at. For example, I had a client come to me and she was applying for jobs. She came to me and she's like, I want, my goal is to be a C-level executive. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you some harsh advice, but I can tell you why you haven't gotten anywhere in your job search. I was like, you're at a management level position and you're trying to make this jump with no bridge. Like you're trying to go 100 miles ahead of where you're at right now. And I said, I'm not telling you can't get there. I fully anticipate that one day she will be there. But I said, we need to go back and we need to figure out what are the steps you need to do to fill in this gap. How are you going to build that bridge to the other side of, the island, basically? And what are those steps and what does that look like? So sometimes you got to assess, like, what are the gaps that so if you are making a career pivot, then what are the gaps that you need to fill in order to successfully do that? Does that mean extra education? Does that mean certifications might be more helpful? But going through that and then getting to the job search. I find that people go, oh, I want to change a job. And then they start applying. And then we hear or we see on social media, I've applied for 200 jobs and I've never gotten any feedback. And it's like, okay, probably at 75, we probably should have stopped at something, but definitely at 100 and definitely at 199. Okay. Like if it's not working, you got to stop and say, what is it in my process that's, and that's oftentimes, obviously as a career coach, I encourage, coaching is an investment in your future. But that can also come from a lot of different, avenues. If you have a mentor, and then also, as Ed mentioned, just applying online, I tell people all this time, is not going to get you the job. You've got to understand the networking aspect of what's happening right now in this market. And networking is the key to success. And it's not going to go anywhere. So sometimes we have to build those skills up, and we have to stop being afraid. Like, I had a client the other day, it was like, well, she's in a very niche industry. And she said, well, I've got all these recruiters that I've already been in contact with. And I'm like, why are you not reaching out to them and letting them know that something that this current position hasn't worked out? Like, you should be reaching out to them. She's like, well, I don't want to bother them. And I was like, I don't care. I was like, no, I was like, but this is your career. And I was like, here's the deal. They're never going to tell you that you're bothering them. I was like, it's one thing if you're harassing somebody. It's another thing if you're just letting them know, here's where I'm at, and this is what I'm looking for. Can we connect?
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was a recruiter, I would have people call me up like every 45 days. Ed, you have anything? I want to tell you something. That was like take a little knife and kind of twist it in my side. It was like they were annoying me. And then, but guess what happened? 4 months later, when a job hit, guess who I was thinking about first?
Exactly.
The very person who was calling me up, because everybody else just, never reached out. So as much as we think it's bad for some, or you're bothering, you're not bothering, but you can't be obnoxious. You have to be professional, and it's just a little twist just to kind of keep you on the radar. So that really helps.
So let me just break down a couple of things you guys have said. Starting with what's next, right? You have to clearly define that. And if you just start applying to jobs, you might get a job. The chances are very small that you would, but you'll never know if it was really the job that's going to optimize your career, the one that will help you thrive, the one that you'll wake up every day, maybe not every day, but most days, and be excited to go to, where you can bring your whole self to work, where you can apply your skills, feel like you're making a difference, feel like you're making an impact, and then have that impact noticed and have the trajectory of your career and income. If you're looking at a graph, right, this is like your growth path if you're managing your career by applying online, and then this is if you are intentional about it. So step one, figure out what is it? What is that next step? What is the most optimized step you can take? And then step two is what I'm hearing is to create a plan, like an action plan that doesn't necessarily revolve around you depending on the online job boards and all of that, but to build your network. And to Ed's point, I remember when I was graduating college, them saying networking is the way to get a job. And I didn't feel like connected. I had my peers, but they don't have, they're in the same boat I am. They're not going to pull me into their company. But what I learned, and LinkedIn has been a tremendous help with all of this, obviously, is that anyone is approachable. Anyone is accessible. You can meet and talk to anyone. And there are ways that you can do that. And it's not always necessarily directly through LinkedIn, but you can know who they are through LinkedIn. You can find out what events they're going to through LinkedIn. Many different things that will give you access to information that will help you. And then what I'm also hearing is, Ed, that the next steps are, and to your point, Melanie, is that it's not necessarily going to look like one thing, right? You have to assess where you're at skill-wise and see what kind of gaps there are, just like you would do in your career. And if there are gaps between where you are now and where you want to be, what is your plan to fill those gaps, right? And then, Ed, if you haven't interviewed in a while or at all, then get some experience, because we all know the more prepared you feel, the more confident you are, the better you perform. But then also, the more you get comfortable in that scenario, just talking about yourself, which is key. And then we can talk about, salary negotiation, and how that looks in terms of optimizing your career. So who wants to talk about salary?
Well, I'll just jump right in, and I'll say the first and foremost is always negotiate when it comes to salary. Maybe jumping a little bit ahead in terms of, evaluating salary, but I'm a big, advocate, because it's something I didn't always do, even in my own career. And I think especially for women in particular, women have a tough time. It's hard when you get to that negotiation stage, or you think like, oh, well, am I asking for too much? And, and Ed probably can even talk about, doing the research on the front end and educating yourself on what salaries are, but, which is another important aspect. But, when it comes to salary, no matter what, unless they literally, marked every single box off of that, and you're like, there's nothing more that you could think of or ask for, then always do yourself a favor and negotiate, because that's going to lend. It's not just about where you're at now, but it's also going to impact where you're going to be in the future.
Let me tell you a short story of a client who 25 years of experience, worked for some really big companies. And he's been a contact center manager, a call center manager. And what happened was his wife got very sick, and he had to basically quit his job. And he was a full-time caretaker for his wife, who was very ill, 2.5 years. Then his wife got better, and it was a beautiful thing. But then he started applying for jobs. 6 months later, he couldn't get an interview. So he called me up and he goes, "Hey, I heard about you. Can you help me?" So what ends up happening is that when I looked at his background, I looked at his resume. It was a horrible resume, sorry. After we spent 5-6 hours with him on his resume alone, it became incredibly clear to me that this person was unbelievably talented. So the fast track the story is that 4 months later, not only has he landed a job, but during the process, he was being interviewed by everybody for higher level jobs than he's ever had before. And that's where the resume becomes so important, because a lot of people go through their early parts of their career or halfway through their career, and companies suppress people. They don't always raise people up. So what ended up happening was he was a senior man, he was a manager, but he was really a director at any other company based on the breadth and scope of his responsibilities. So by creating a resume that truly brought out his value, not only did he get back to work, he ended up getting paid 25% more money than he's ever made his entire career. So there's salary negotiation, but if you do the work well up front, in terms of bringing out someone's true value, that's going to impact the salary right out of the gate. And of course, when we had to go to negotiate, we were negotiating things like vacation time. We weren't even coming close to worrying about base pay, because it was more money than he had ever seen before. So these stories are, I tell that story because you have to start at your strongest position. And that's why the resume is so important to us. We don't edit resumes. We revamp resumes, and those who want to edit it, I have to send them to somewhere else, because we don't edit resumes, right?
Yeah, same.
So it's kind of, but that's a story. The other story I wanted to share with you, these are two other really mini quick stories, but sometimes you'll actually talk to clients and they want to get somewhere. They don't have the skills to get there. No matter what we do, they don't have the skills to get there. I was fortunate enough to have a person who was on the Texas Rangers call me up. All places. "Ed, you know what? I heard about you. Let's meet, because look, I'm going up, down, up, down. I'm like a yo-yo with the Texas Rangers. And you know what, Ed? No matter what I do, I don't have what it takes to be a professional baseball player. I don't. They have something that can keep them at this high level. I don't have. And Ed, I don't want to do this for another 5, 6, 7 years. What else can I do?" Well, the net of it is that now, who's one of the most successful medical device salespeople in the U.S.? This former Texas Ranger, right? So sometimes skills don't match up well. Another quick example is somebody who wanted to be a police officer. No matter what they did, they had everything to be a police officer. No matter what they did, they couldn't make it. Why? Because they couldn't pass the physical test, no matter how hard they tried. Now, the backstory of that was he was a veteran in the Iraq War and had his right leg blown off. So people come to you as a career coach, "Hey, I want to be this." Sometimes life's just not going to get you to where you want to be. And then the question is, what could you do next? Now, this is one of the most successful real estate people that I know. Right? So all these twists and turns that come at people, just because somebody says I want to be something as a career coach, sometimes it's hard because if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. In other cases, Melanie brought up the point, you have to go get the skills before you make that pivot. You can't say, I'm going to be this, and you have no training in it, no skills in it. No one's going to hire you to do anything, but you got to show some forward movement and go get that training. And it may not be 1 month, 3 months. It could be 9 months, a year later. Then you're ready to make that change. So skill sets, and as a career coach, we have to be really careful that people have those skills if they're aiming for something, or you're sending into harm's way.
I just want to encourage everybody who's watching to send these career coaches your questions. We're all happy to answer your questions. Just pop them right in there, and I can bring them up so that Melanie and Ed can see them, and we can all discuss them. Even if it's just a thought, even if you have a story that sounds similar to what they're sharing, and you can reinforce the message that we're all sending to own your career. Let us know. So I just want to recap some things that has been said now in terms of, when to consider contacting your career coach, right? So if you're not sure what's next, if you think you know what's next, but you don't know what the steps are to get you there, whether it be what skills you need to fill, what gaps you need to fill, or the actual campaign you need to use and what actions you need to take to get there. If you need to skill up in networking, interviewing, negotiating, but also if you find yourself in a career that you thought you would love and you're finding that either that love isn't there, or that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you're not able to optimize your career. You can see the trajectory is not going in the direction you want. Those seem to be moments where you might say, maybe I should reach out to Ed or Melanie or Karen. What other things, what other signs could somebody looking for a change in their career path or job, what could they be experiencing right now that might clue them into, hey, maybe it's a good idea to reach out to a career coach?
I mean, I think it's also, you really have to do a self-assessment of where you're at, are you truly happy? Are you truly happy? I think when we are in, Ed mentioned in his introduction that he jumps out of bed every single morning. And no, we're not, there's going to be those days where we're not going to have those days, and that's okay. But are those days outnumbering the days that you're excited to jump out of bed and get to work, And so really doing that self-assessment, because we often stay, and I even found this in myself, I left my last company after 8 years, and I honestly should have left much sooner than I did, but I was comfortable. And I thought, well, I have, I've earned some privileges, and I've earned my, I have my clientele, and I have the trust of my executive vice president, and, I'm a single mom. I'm, he lets me kind of have a flexible schedule, and I don't really want to start all, I made excuses for why I couldn't, look at, that opportunity. Because I had recruiters coming to me, coming and saying, hey, come join our firm. And I'm just like, well, I loved my team. I had all these things, but I also didn't have a good corporate, I had good people around me, but the people above me were not, supportive. And then the company itself was not stable. And there was a lot of things happening. It wasn't happening to me, but it was happening around me. And I was like, oh, it's not in my office. It's not in my branch. And so when you start seeing those signs and your happiness is being affected, don't fool yourself thinking that it's not impacting your personal life
or your health.
Or your health, like your mental, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm big on mental health, and so not it could, if it's impacting your mental health and physical health, top two signs, because without our health, we've got nothing else, and none of what we've talked about matters. So the rest of the stuff just goes away. So if you don't have your health, first and foremost, But if it's also, it's also going to start to seep into your personal life, and it is going to impact your family. And so, don't dismiss if your family's coming to you and saying that they're seeing these signs, or, your behavior, things like that. Those are good, those are a good sign that you need to kind of take a step back and start to evaluate. And then, I'm also a big believer in a lot of what I do with my clients is talk about mindset. A lot of times we just don't believe we are worthy of, that next great opportunity. And that's, and Ed mentioned this a little bit, but that's what the corporate system can do to you if you're not in the right company. If you don't have a boss that's going to build you up and support you and back you when there's tough decisions. Of course, when it's called for and things of that nature. There are good companies out there, and you deserve better.
I'm going to give it a kind of a little bit different twist on that. There's two points in everyone's career where they have a choice to make, and it happens continuously. One is being offensively minded in terms of trying to optimize your career, and the other is more of a defensive situation, right? So if you knew that your company was just purchased and you have to be in a shared services function like HR, finance, and then what you could almost anticipate, well, the company's being purchased, they already have an HR department, they already have a finance department. I might be at risk. Now, see, you can wait 6 months and have your boss come on a Friday and say, we're going to let you go. And that once you get let go, then you get to optimize your career at that point, right? Because you have to. And it's completely a defensive move. And there's nothing, people, that happens all the time when people get let go, especially if they don't see it coming.
Yeah.
But then you have to optimize your career. But then somebody else might say, you know what, company just got bought. I'm going to go talk to a career coach, and I got to start moving now. Because if this hammer was to drop, and by the way, something else might be out there way before the hammer drops. One of the common mistakes that I see people make is that, hey, Ed, I'm going to wait it out because I'm going to get a severance. And you know what? If that's something, if the company's big enough and they're known for doing that, that strategy works. But once you get the severance, don't call the career coach. Call the career coach 4 or 5 months before, right? You get the severance. So then you get the new job and the severance, right? But statistically in the U.S., and I haven't looked at the number lately, but I want to say only less than 50% of the people in the U.S. will ever get a severance. So people who work for companies thinking that severance is guaranteed, that's not the case, even for big companies. So what I'm bringing up, Karen, is this whole notion of you could be offensively minded or defensively driven, and all the things that can happen in between. And that's something I talk about all the time, because when you ask the question, when do you need a career coach? Well, when you're unemployed, or when you want to get to a better place, or when you're potentially at risk, right? So there's kind of three places when we become, and Melanie, you probably heard this many, many times. I hear it all the time. I wouldn't have known a career coach if I fell over one. I didn't even know a career coach even existed. I've been in misery for 10 years. I didn't know what a career coach was. I thought you were a recruiter. Right? And a recruiter and a career coach are two completely different animals, right?
Yeah. April asked the question, so can you optimize a resume or LinkedIn profile to target higher salaried positions? I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, look, branding is all about, putting forth your brilliance and positioning yourself for an optimized career path, and creating demand for you. And when you have created demand for you, then you can demand, it definitely makes you feel a lot better negotiating, to say, this is what I'm worth. Right. What say you guys?
I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm all about personal branding and owning your person. You know, each of us has a personal brand. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be, business owner. You know, we all think of companies as as branding, but we each carry a personal brand. It's the message that you send not only on your resume but on your LinkedIn profile as well. And you can elevate. You know, if you're looking to take that next level, then we need to see what that next level already looks like. What do you possess that allows you to do that? And we need to see that, and we need to see that on the resume. You don't want your profile or your resume to just speak to the job that you're in. You want it to speak to the job that you're seeking. And if that's that next level, if that's, where you make the step, then we need to be able to see that you have that competency and that ability to do that.
You know, one of the things that you have to be really careful of, and I see this mistake a lot, is when people are working at a company and the company's HR system or the company culture, they define the work that you do with a word. And that word could be, and I'm living proof of this. I work for a company where, I'm called team leader, and they have a hierarchy. So, and I see this mistake happen all the time. So then what happens is that on your LinkedIn, I have to put on LinkedIn and my resume, I'm a team leader because the company called me a team leader, and it's on the HR paperwork and it's on my paycheck, team leader. But when anywhere else in America, at $1 billion company, I was the vice president of talent acquisition. So the mistake that's made, and to April's point, is that I would be foolish to put team leader on the header of the LinkedIn page or my resume. Guess what's going to go there? Vice president. And you could use this same logic between people who are called senior associates. Well, at other places, they'd be called a director. So just getting the title right can position you to a higher level salary, just so you're not lying, just so you're telling the truth, and just so the marketplace understands the scope and breadth of that work is tied to that title. You're good to go. So take full advantage of that and not get penned into or henpecked into this notion of, I have to put down exactly what the company called me. And I'm a big believer in that. But then in parentheses, actually I do it the other way around now. I say put down what the market would know you for, and then in parentheses what the company called you internally. So that's just one way of doing it. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that question, April, and thanks for being here. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and pop them in there. Ed, you were mentioning, if 4 to 5 months ahead of time that you could be laid off, that's a good time to contact a career coach. I know for me, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I need a job now, right? I'm like, okay, this is a person who has emotions. That people go through a very emotional process when change is thrust upon them, a grieving process that can look kind of messy. One day they can look like they're determined and they're going to show their past employer what they lost. And one day you can really feel down and out. There can be anger. There can be, a lot of fear, and all of those emotions can really play into that first part of determining what the next step is. So how do you help your clients manage their emotions so that they can understand that this allocation of front end time that you put in is going to optimize your results on the back end? How do you help them through that?
Well, the first thing is to really understand that this is an investment for you. And I work a lot with people with their mindset and working with them to really build themselves up so that they see themselves in that role. And that that they are worthy of having this type of position and seeking this change. The other thing that I really work on is doing actionable steps. And I think that because sometimes it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to think like, I've got to apply for how many jobs, and I got to network, and I've got to do this. So breaking it down into a schedule and basically, actionable steps. And then from there, you can kind of see the results. Then it starts to be a little bit more tangible. And then people start to they get that small success. And sometimes you have to point out what those small successes are, because once you hit submit, you don't necessarily have control over whether it's an email to network with somebody or submitting your resume. You lose that, you have no control of what's going to happen next. So focus on the things that we can control, and then looking to see okay, well, what happened what happened with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you doing that every, other day, every single day? What is your job search plan? And having those actionable, tangible results is something that I think can feed that. Then oh, this is working. Oh, if I do this, then this will, I bet I could continue to do this and see these results.
It takes a little leap of faith in the beginning, doesn't it? Until you can get those results.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because oftentimes, like Ed mentioned, by the time you come with a career coach, you've probably already have been in the situation where you haven't seen the success, because that's probably why you're coming to us. So you're already a little defeated. And so you're a little skeptical that, what this person is telling you. Because often I tell my clients, I said, I'm not interested in you applying for 20 jobs. I'm interested in you applying. I would rather you apply for 3 jobs that are truly what you want, as opposed to just applying left and right and then getting frustrated that because there's things that we can do to network and expand our reach for those 3 jobs.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Smaller quantity, larger quality produces a whole different job search experience.
Yes.
Then you're not interviewing for jobs where ultimately one or both of you are going to determine that it's not a fit. And then you've wasted all that time and invested all that energy. Much different job search experience. Ed, share your thoughts on that.
Oh, wow. Let me tell you some people I don't work with. If somebody comes to me and say, "Hey, Ed, I want to get back to work. I don't care what job. I don't care what the job is.
Yeah,
I can go back to work." That's a bad choice.
Yeah.
Hey, Ed, I'm going to tell you what I want you to do for me. I beg them to go to another career coach. Because as soon as they start thinking of me as a service, the coaching part kind of diminishes, because then people are thinking, well, Ed, you said you were going to do this for me or this for me. No. One of the jobs of the coach is just like a football coach, basketball coach, softball coach, right? You're teaching the person what to do so they can go and execute well.
Yeah.
Now I have my network's about 26,000 direct connections. I will leverage my network, trust me, with my clients, and that's some of the reasons they hire me, because they want to leverage. Ed has a pretty big network, which is true, but they can't rely on me just exclusively.
Yeah.
We kind of work as a team, right?
Yeah.
So there's some prerequisites there that become really, really important. And some people say, "Hey, Ed, let's get the resume done in a couple of days."
Yeah.
No, we're going to get the resume done in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I've always edited my resume, and I've been done in an hour. And I had hired somebody, 6 months ago, who edited my resume from 3 pages down to 2, and it looks really, really good. And it's very
But here you are again.
very colorful, and it has a lot of bold on it. And then I look at it and I say, well, we're going to start from scratch, because it completely doesn't pass my muster.
Yeah.
It's out of 1 to 10, you might score a 4. But see, and this is why I ask people to do a preliminary discussion with me, so that we actually go through this and we talk it through. I think it through. I pray about it, and you know what? If it's meant to be, then that will happen. But some people are, and some people don't want to work with me because I'm pretty stubborn. Melanie may be, the better choice. So not all career coaches are cut out of the same cloth, and they're not meant to work, for everybody, which is fine. But I share that because, when you go to a career coach, there's an expectation, they're going to coach you, but you're not going to tell them what to do, right? It's just it seems so simple, but you'd be surprised. I've had, over 800 successes. I've only had to give 2 refunds my entire career so far as a career coach, but those 2 were pretty painful, because even though they kind of went, yep, they want it their way.
Yeah.
And I can only coach people based on the success I've had with previous clients.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, Ed, I saw this LinkedIn thing, and this is what I want my resume to look like. Not a chance with me.
Right.
Not a chance.
Yeah. I agree. Definitely qualify the clients. Yeah.
So that's another perspective around it, Karen.
Yeah. Melanie, how do you identify your ideal client?
So I have a discovery call with them before. I always talk to the client before and get a feel for, like, is this something that can we really be able to work together? Last year I had a situation where it just became very obvious that I wasn't going to be able to help this particular woman. I literally had I actually met with her in person. We met at a mutual location. We met for 2 hours, and she was never happy. And then with the revision, she's like, I don't even know where you got these words. And I was like, they're from you. They were I literally wrote everything and I recorded everything you said.
Mhm.
This is what you're in, so it, and I just remember, like, that was when I was like, oh, she's going to be hard, but I think I can work with her. And I probably should have listened more to my gut on that one. But just really getting a feel, like, can we work together? Are you going to, like Ed said, some people think, like, well, why does it, I had somebody ask me, why is it taking you so long to work on the resume? And I said, it's going to take me, it does take about, up to 2 weeks. One, you're not the only client, so you do have to respect that.
Mhm.
But two, it does take time to reconstruct a resume and to rebuild it and to have it reflect. And so it's not something that, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that you don't see.
Yeah.
And trying to come up with the right, the verbiage and, making sure that it's, accurate and reflects where you're going. It's not a process that can just, hiring a career coach isn't going to, it's to give you the tools that are going to help you move forward with your career, but it's not, it's not like you're going to snap your fingers and, like, oh, okay, I got the job. You've got to put, the other thing I look for is, my client's going to put the work in for it. And I tell them that, like, I want your let's look at this together. And I want your feedback. I want to, what are you thinking? And if you give me something that, like, hey, can we reword this? And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. That, I do work in collaboration, but if it's something that, no, I want it to be this big splashy resume with all these, I'm like, that's not going to work in today's world.
Yeah.
You don't need it. And, unless you're handing your resume to every single person you meet, which I seriously doubt, you just don't need it. And here, I'm going to tell you why. So, really, are they going to listen, but are they also going to put in the work that they need to do?
Exactly. Yeah, it does. I think that's something that I have learned, definitely, to let my clients know in the front end. This is going to take some time investment from you. You need to be involved in this process. You're not just going to outsource everything. I can't manufacture facts.
Right.
Yes. And I would say, just from my perspective, the clients that I work with are, and this is appropriate for the C3 community, right? They're not just looking for higher status. They're not just looking for higher salaries. The clients that I really love to work with, and who I now exclusively work with, really, they're looking for a way to use their career to make a more conscious world. They're looking for impact. They're looking for something that fulfills them. They might have been very successful in their previous roles, but there's a piece of it that always misaligned with their values. So I want to use this last 3 minutes, Ed, for you to kind of say, if you are this person, then reach out to me, because I will get so much joy from helping you.
Oh my goodness. Well, one of the greatest joys I get is someone who's in a what you would call a toxic environment at work. Someone who's being hurt, especially if it's a woman and there's a male boss, and they're using their power and control to do punitive things. and make people feel bad about themselves. And they're in this kind of culture. And by the way, that culture exists in big corporate billion-dollar America. It is not isolated to little baby companies. But those are clients that, oh my goodness, I just love to have them come and talk to me, and I can help them get to that better place. And I think the other people are people who think that, life is over. They turned 51 and they got laid off.
Mm-hmm.
Half of my clients were over the age of 60 last year who I coached who ended up landing a job, right? But it takes a lot of work. And then the last group of people, and these are all hard, none of these are easy, are people who want to make pivots, people who want to get to that better place, because that knot in the stomach is so big, and I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And those pivots are places that I love to bring people to, although it's hard work. You won't hear the word easy, it's hard.
Yeah.
So those are just 3 examples, Karen, of those are the kind of people that I just love, knock on my door, and if I can help them, I will.
All right, excellent. If you consider yourself part of any of those populations, reach out to Ed. Ed, what's the best way to reach you?
Hey, best way to reach you, just go to our website, SamNova, SamNovaInc.com, SamNovaInc.com. And there's even a box where you could book an appointment with me, free consultation. And our main number is 610-274-8214, 610-274-8214. And reach out. And certainly all you have to do is put Ed Samuel Career Coach, LinkedIn. I'll be on the first page of Google. Connect with me. That's another great way to reach out.
All right. So Melanie, same for you. Who's like the dream client, the people that just make you wake up every day loving what you do, and how do they reach you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that person that really truly wants to make that change, that is ready to make that change and wants a partner and wants to really partner and collaborate with me as their coach to be able to, to be able to make those steps forward. And that, that I can help work with from the beginning through the whole journey, from start to finish, and be able to see them through that process. That's really that person that I get excited about, and be able to take them to that next level where they're like, wow, this is my dream job, and where it's not just a word, it's just not a phrase that's overused, but they're truly excited about this opportunity that they have. And then the best way is, of course, LinkedIn, Melanie Mitchell Wexler. You can just find me there. And of course, you can Google me as well. And my website will also come up. It's www.findsucceedachieve.com. You can connect with me there as well. And yeah, I would love to connect with anybody interested.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me, and helping us share with the C3 community, as well as streaming across LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube to help people optimize their career. This is a really interesting moment in time that we're in. And if the power is in the people's hands, which it is, then you can use this moment in time to get someplace better and align your talent with companies that will appreciate it and recognize you for all the value you bring. And that's exactly what career coaches help you do, to articulate your value, help you align, help you improve your career trajectory, your salary and income trajectory. So reach out to Ed, reach out to Melanie, reach out to myself from the C3 community. Again, if you, like us, believe that if we put our efforts together, if we can strategize, if we can co-create, which we can, then we can co-create a more conscious landscape. We can put our ripples together and create a larger wave of change that's really hard to resist from the forces that be right now that are trying to suppress the change that's really just much needed. We can use this moment in time. So join the C3 community. You can find that right under my name there. If you're not in that community already, thank you, April. Thanks everybody else who made it here. You can look for the replay in the C3 community. So if there's anything you want to look back at, that's where to go. The C3 community, which stands for Corporate Consciousness Co-op. And we look forward to next month and other events that we may have. And again, if you are in the C3 community, if you are an expert on something, share with us what that is. We'll put it in a poll. We'll create some events. We don't have to do just monthly events. If you want to create an event and invite some people and just have a conversation that helps us move the needle forward, let's do it. That's what we're here for. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your May.
Bye. Thank you.